I got the basic gist of everyone, but I think most of you guys for quite some time now. So I will just start with Sarah out here. So I have a little bit of notes I'm going to read from there, which I made a few days ago, and then established it properly after I met her today. So Sarah Shah Halim is a social and peace activist, an educator, a writer, a theatre personality, a poet. I think I don't have enough words to describe her, but she has had about more than a decade's experience in corporate sector in different roles, and she's a motivational speaker, she's an activist, she's the executive committee member of West Bengal Federation of United Nations Association, and she's also a very well-known poet. And today we are going to celebrate a day about women who have been as dynamic as possible, and I don't think anyone else fits the bill so perfectly. So that's Sarah for you. The next one will be Ramanjeet. Hi Ramanjeet, I'm so sorry, I just came in, I was so zapped by everyone around that I did not get to greet you properly, but she is a theatre actor, a film actor, a director. She has so many things to do at so little time. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that I've seen in women today, that they fit everything together, and apart from being an international award-winning theatre and film actor and director, she has also been the lead actor of Prathama Shri Neelam Mansingh Chaudhary's group, The Company, for almost 2 decades, okay? And she has trained at the Central School of Speech and Drama, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, the Birmingham School of Speech and Drama, and she has made a significant contribution to films like Anatomy of Violence by Deepa Mehta, as well as Videsh, Heaven and Earth, as well as Fire. And that, my dear friends, is a very tiny part in a very illustrious woman's career. Next I would go straight to Parvata Banerjee, and I wish to hear a little bit more about your voice, because I have been told by everybody around me, whoever has heard, as you have the most divine voice. And she's an artist and a producer, and she's a vocalist of Rabindra Sangeet. She has performed worldwide. She has quite a few publications to her name. She has been a senior financial consultant, and at the same time she is interested in world cinema, and that led her to doing so many different things that she has done. So for today I'm going to make her tell you guys more about what she has been doing. Next we have Choitali Dash, and I would say that this woman has something very unique to her name, and that is she's a jute revivalist. So when I was growing up, I used to stay beside a jute mill, so I know a little bit about jute. But that's about it, apart from my entire story about knowing about jute. But she's the managing trustee of Rakshak Foundation, a non-profit organization. She has won the Exceptional Woman of Excellence by Women Economic Forum. She obtained a degree in Human Resource Management from the University of Cambridge, but she is a former AFT Mrs. International and a social entrepreneur who has been running she has been running in association with Rakshak Foundation. She has been running 2 child development centers in Kolkata, and I think this is in association with Kolkata Police. Then one of them is called Navodisha, and the other one is Iqbalpur Navodisha. One of them is in Toleganj, the other one is in Iqbalpur. And she has also created a social program called Jute Story, which is Jute Story Beyond Bars, which employs jail inmates to develop new skills at various correctional homes across this country. That's again an incredible feat for someone who's been doing so many different things at the same time. And finally, this woman is one of my favorite people in this planet. So her achievements, I would have to say, are so many that I don't have words. But I met her for the first time in Marriott, and at that point in time she was one of the key persons who helped introduce the Marriott brand to Kolkata. And she studied political science Then she did art, international relations from VU, which is also my alumni. So again, the second connect was very apparent. And then apart from being one of the most loved people in our hospitality industry, she now is the chief executive of Ganguly Ceramics, which is a family business. She joined it in 2017 after having a very long and very illustrious hotelier career in in Oberoi and Marriott. So I would have to say that she has a very beautiful, very interesting side as well, where she is a poet and she is a published poet who has done her poetry readings, and she has conducted poetry workshops as well as encouraged people all around Kolkata and beyond to join in poetry slams, submit more poems, and basically making poor people who have no idea what poetry writing is all about write her some poetry, which includes me.
Right. Firstly, wash your hands for 20 seconds. 20 seconds. That's the first thing that we have to say. The most important thing. Women's Day, not day, any day. Until this damn thing, goes away. Wash your hands. Okay? Now let's get back to business. Unbridled. Okay? Control. I think we all need control, and we need to go beyond it. My mother was on the phone and I said, please go out and take the phone call. That's control. That's needed. Okay? Somebody tells me, maybe your button needs to be buttoned. That's control. Maybe, that is needed. But that control needs to be in our hands. I think that is the most important thing. And what to say, the most important thing to say no or yes to. I think that is, and I think I don't know why I am here. I think I'm the biggest misfit here, and I have, if you call achievement, I don't know what achievement is. Somebody who runs a tea stall and cooks for 5-10 people in the family has more achievement to her name than I do. So I think it's what you call, I have been brought up in a privileged background, so I can't really define achievement. It's not like for like. Okay, so let's not define achievement. Let's look at the journeys of these women who did what they wanted to and took some control back. I'll tell you a story. I'm a radio addict. I love listening to the radio, and I'm a story addict. I love stories. And I think that is the first definition of my life. I am a storyteller and I listen to stories. A few days ago, I can't even remember who this journalist was. She's a very senior journalist in the UK, and she was being interviewed in the radio, and she was asked, what was the turning point in your life? She's very senior, she's done a lot of work, and sadly I can't remember her name because I don't know, it's probably hormonal, and I have no shame in saying it. So women say that you're hormonal and whatever it is, so maybe I'm losing my memory, but that's okay, I accept it. But she said, okay, there was one turning point. I was in school, and there was a senior master teacher who put me on a chair and asked me to say something. I can't even remember what the topic was. And she tried to say it. The minute she started talking, this man started screaming at her, shut up, shut up, shut up. And she just stopped. She said, why did you stop? This master said, why did you stop? And she said, because you were shouting and you were screaming and I had to stop. She said, the whole world, and then the master said, the teacher said, the whole world will scream at you. The whole world will ask you to shut up, but your skill is to keep shouting. So let's try again. I'm going to say shut up and you have to scream. And this girl, little girl, she started screaming and she hasn't stopped. So I think that is what we have to learn. That if you believe in something, if you want to do something, unless it's harming, and harm, I think it can be defined without any relativity. Harm is harm. Harm is pure harm. So if we want to do something without harming someone or even harming ourselves, not only harming others, I think we should keep shouting. Okay? So let's find out from these women where the turning point was in their lives. Who do we start with? Shall we go by like a school? Shall we start on the right hand side and then we go from that side?
So there have been so many turning points. I find it hard to actually pinpoint one. because the life, as you beautifully said, is a journey. And in this journey, you come across different people, different moments, and you evolve. So I don't know, when I was in upper infants, which was precisely, I think I was 5 years old, I had this, I was a good girl, okay? So I was a teacher's pet, and I was, thank you. But I wouldn't talk, I'd be this nice, quiet child. But I remember that on a very weird way, children used to be lined up and the parents would come from the other end, and then one by one, the parents would take the child and go away. So here was this little girl who wouldn't talk, who wouldn't scream, she was the teacher's pet. But I don't know what would happen. I would see my parent that end of the door and I would run out from this end. I don't know why. Obviously, I have no recollection of the reasoning in my head at that point of time. But I would run out. And this happened 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 days, till the headmistress called me and gave me a whack. Those days it was still okay for teachers to give you a whack and not get expelled as a teacher or whatever. But yeah, she gave me a whack on my calf muscle and something turned. Something turned about my image. Maybe that was a turning point, right? Later on in life, a failed marriage was a turning point. Going out and working the way I did in sales and marketing, everybody told me this quiet little girl who never spoke in college would one day head a department in sales and marketing. That was a turning point. And life just encapsulates so many other turning points.
Okay. As just Ikshika mentioned about, there are so many turning points. So in life, I also had many turning points, but right now, my life has been always I wouldn't say it's a topsy-turvy, but it's different. I started my career in an MNC. I was working there for some 11 years, and then I thought that my son was growing up and my husband needed, because my husband was also trying to establish himself from the scratch. And I stayed at home. I decided to take a break, or rather quit, which I was doing well in my own way, serving in an MNC. And then I became absolutely homebound from 2002 up to 2013. I just fast forwarded. And I was having all my phone book with all plumbers and maids and istriwalas and everybody. I had my in-laws. I come from a very conservative family. And so due to the age and illness, I lost my father-in-law, my mom, my dad. We had 3 kids. My son grew up. He was in a boarding school, in June school. Then I again came back. From 2002 to 2013, I made a comeback. I tried to join my family business. From there, I got into the various chamber of commerce. And then after, I turned a social entrepreneur, absolutely. When people tell me that I run an NGO, but please, I don't run an NGO. I myself am a social entrepreneur, and this is actually my own money which I invest. And as a social entrepreneur, I invest my time, my energy, my expertise, and my investment. So that is a social entrepreneur. And this is absolutely run by my own money as a director of my family business. So 70% of my salary goes to my foundation. So I started and I did not stop. This took me as an addiction. One after another, I went on taking up social causes and I addressed them. And there are so many stories, so many human beings and so many attachment that I get into it that I really don't want to stop. And I think that even my lifespan is also very short to address all of them. So every day that I'm coming across a lot of challenges, a lot of human stories, I work with the prison inmates, and I'm the only social enterprise that MSME registered and in parallel with all government bodies that we run jute manufacturing unit with the prisoners in correctional home, in Dum Central Correctional Home and Residency. So there are a lot actually. So to begin with, I think I should stop here because otherwise I will go on and the moderator will be confused where to stop me. So thank you.
The last thing you want to do is stop. You do not want to stop. You carry on and the moderator will not stop you. So carry on.
Thank you.
Azwan.
A very good evening and thank you Shilpa for inviting me. And I feel very happy to be among such lovely, some of my favorite people among all of you today evening. So yeah, like everyone else's life, my life has had at least 2-3 turning points till now, and they've been quite, now when I look back, they've been quite interesting, and they made me what I am today. So here was this girl. I was extremely naughty, but yeah, so padhai mein bhi top and sharaton mein bhi top. That's how my college, university, and I used to bash up boys all my life. So even till date in Chandigarh, when my husband went for the reunion, all my classmates said that remember you bashed me there, and so the stories still go on in Chandigarh. And then I got married, and I thought, okay, and my theatre career professionally started in school. So I was a very well-established theatre person even before I went to college or university, and by the time I got married, I had already signed for a cameo in Fire with Deepa Mehta. So I thought I've done enough theatre and done all the crazy stuff all my life. Now is the time to play the good babu. So now I'm getting married, I'll go to Calcutta and I'll play the role of a good babu. But of course, it's very difficult for spirits like me, which are, I think, born unbridled. So I landed up here. I've been coming here as a child, as a performer. But then when I got married, I said, where am I? I mean, I'm the child of the valleys and the mountains, and my soul belongs there to the trees and the open skies and the fresh air. What am I doing here? This is a jungle of concrete. You can't breathe, you can't even see or feel air. And the people are different. They are Bhadra log, unlike Balle Balle Punjabis. And I kept on questioning it for a very long time, because I'm someone who cannot just live in oblivion. I believe in conscious living, and I'm looking at myself all the time. And I did things like past life regression in those years, in the 90s, and all kinds of stuff to even understand why am I here. But I think that was the biggest and the best thing that happened to me now in retrospect. It's more than 20 years now that I've been here. I think the Chandigarh life chiseled me, polished me as a person, as an artist, what I was supposed to be. And then it completely uprooted me, my marriage, and threw me in a place where I think my role was required. And I think after coming here, I had to wear a director's hat also, and I created the Creative Arts, which is Theatre and Performing Arts Academy. And another turning point happened in 2011 when I started All Women Theatre Group, which is again a national award winning project right now, because I started with non-theatre communities. And that's when I started realizing that, you know, arts was not just to art for art's sake, but it was also to serve a deeper and a very practical cause of the society. So here was a community who was not maybe even going to theatre unless it was Bollywood theatre coming here. But it was also a community which decided to suddenly do theatre. So it was all the business community, most of them Marwaris, some Punjabi, some Sindhi, and of course Bengalis. So here it is, the all women group, which has helped me work on theatre as therapy. And the spiritual journey, I think my close friends know the kind of spiritual journey we've taken together. And I think that has also been a very big turning point in my life.
Thank you so much, Shilpa, for having me over. Thanks, Purna. Thank you, all of you. So, hearing everyone, it's so inspiring. We'll speak a little bit about my journey. Well, like any other normal person, my father was in the army. So, when people ask me where you're from, I don't know what to answer. Because honestly, I was shifting cities every 2 years, 3 years. My father spent 40 years in the army, retired as a lieutenant general. So for me, I knew that every 2 years I'm going to change schools, my friend group is going to change, my teachers are going to change. So for a young child who has seen the entire country actually, because there's no corner where I haven't lived in India, right from northeast, from Manipur to Nagaland. The kind of places, if I tell you, like I've lived in Punjab, peak of insurgency, to northeast again, the Ulfa movement. So I've seen it all, where we used to travel by convoys, and anytime my father's convoy could get ambushed. So there used to be a special convoy that used to pick me up when I was in college. My father was posted somewhere in Kakchi, and that is 2.5 hours away from Imphal. So I remember in between we used to change the vehicles, because every day they had a parallel army going on underground. That's how Northeast used to be in the late 90s. So of course it was challenging being brought up in circumstances. I remember my father being in Taran district, height of insurgency in the 90s, early 90s. And I didn't know where my father is. So he was the Colonel General Staff of Infantry Division. And I remember my mother sobbing, cooking food, counting the pennies. Literally, because the pay commissions hadn't come in, the 7th pay commission, 6th pay commission. Everyone was like on a shoestring budget. But you were feeling proud that your father's serving the country, he's guarding the borders, he's serving the nation. And for us, that mattered more than the money. The honor that comes, seeing a man on a dining table wearing the uniform with all his honors and his badges, so that, seeing him had a big influence in my life. So when people say which city do you connect with, I think the only city that I connect with is Calcutta, because I've spent a lot of time in Delhi in my growing up years. I studied at the Army public school. Then one fine day my father decided that you all can't keep shifting schools every 2 years. So the first turning point in my life was when he put my brother and I in a boarding. So I was there for about 4 years at Lawrence School, Lovedale, Ooty. So here, before that, I was studying in Kendriya Vidyalaya, Firozpur for a year. And I was coming first in my class, second, because I felt I'm very good. But what happens is, your confidence gets completely shattered when you come to a school where everyone is like the creme de la creme of India. Akshay Khanna, Vinod Khanna's son was my senior. You have Mr. Moneybags, Miss Moneybags, like studying with you. They used to come back with huge tuck bags, So that could give you a complex. And we were army kids, where you were taught, you were given the best of facilities. Of course, you have the gym, you have the best of clubs, you have that power thing, vehicles, you get a huge bungalow to stay, all that. But it's a journey. People don't understand that today, as a general, if you're getting a huge bungalow to stay, you've also stayed in tin houses as well, if your father's posted in a field area. So I've seen, the best of both the sides. So when I came to Kolkata after I finished my graduation, I was a very young girl. I was 21 years old. We've led a sheltered upbringing, boarding school, boarding college, army life. So I had never even voted before in my life. So I ironically got married into a political family, which was, my father was in power at that time. He was the Speaker of the West Bengal Assembly. And when I came in, there was some by-election, some election around the corner every 2 years, so it was something new. So my husband, he's a very progressive man. The reason why I agreed to marry him when the proposal came, he firstly, day one, he said, look, I'm an atheist. I said, so he thought probably his numbers will come down if he says he's an atheist. So I said, no, thumbs up, I like the idea. I said, that means you're progressive. So I think that attracted me, that he could come out, tell my parents that, look, I'm a non-believer, I don't believe in God, I believe in humanism, I believe in being a good human being. So that, he's had a phenomenal influence in my life, my husband, the way he works, the way he serves people, the kind of social work he does. So being married into a family like that, where my mother had given me, like all protective mothers say, shalwar kameez pehenna in the morning, be a little, docile, and wear little jewelry. So the same stereotypical stuff she told me: when you get up, wear a gown if you're wearing a nightie, when you come, we have been told certain things which we question today. But in those days, imagine telling a 21-year-old girl, there were so many domestics, so many staff, yet she told me, get up in the morning, help your mother in the kitchen. And this is time when I filled my forms for my post-graduation. So a 21-year-old girl, just to impress her in-laws, I got in, started making breakfast. My mother said, no, you're so young, your hands will get burnt, please go back, no one cooks here. I was like, wow, no one cooks here, like that's amazing. Like, yeah, what is Fuad going to say if I'm sending a newly married girl? So for me, seeing a family like that, who is progressive in every way, something very different than what my mother had told me about, like be coy and, do as your mother-in-law says. So this was like a huge 360 degree. I think it totally gave me wings, and I think I just wish that every girl, gets in-laws like that. When I was wearing suits, my mom had got these suits made. She's like, what's wrong with you? What did you wear when you were in college? I said, I used to wear my denims, my skirts. Yeah, so please wear that. Nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing has changed. And just because you're married doesn't mean you have to wear shalwar kameez, right? So, in fact, my husband used to stare at me like, what's wrong? Yeah, a few days ago you were wearing your denims. Today it was shalwar kameez with jewelry, like a gold set or something. Please take it off and wear normally. So, it started from there. That's a big turning point, I think, when you decide to get married for every woman. Second is becoming a mother and your career choice. So when I became a mother, I was 23 years old when I had my daughter. And there was a time when I finished my master's, I filled up my forms for my law. And I thought, what do I do? You're still deciding. So then I joined the corporate, I joined training and development. I worked with some of the top MNCs. In between my career, like say about between 8 to 9 years of working with different multinationals and some of the top corporate firms in training and development, I had this offer to go to Pune. And this is when I had a child who was 3 or 4 years old to serve there at a senior post. So for me, thinking, how would I divide my time? My in-laws are in Calcutta, I have to work in Pune. I somehow did it, I wanted to do it. So I took up this project in Pune. I was there for close to 8 months. But believe me, it was very tough. I used to go into my training room, train senior managers, come out and cry because I used to miss my daughter. So that, these emotions play out. But the tugs of motherhood are so strong. Even though I was doing extremely well, I wanted to come back to Kolkata within 8 months. I couldn't stay without seeing my daughter. So when I got that email, right, from Shilpa, like the choices you didn't have to make and made. So this was something that was conscious, that I chose my motherhood over my career. Because the heart tugs, the tugs of the heart are stronger than the paycheck, end of the day. So I came back to Kolkata, restarted completely, changed my career line 360 degree. Then I got into business development from training and education. But yes, I was also consulting, I was training. So it's good about 16, 17 years in training, talent engagement and development roles. My third biggest challenge came when I was I used to come back home. There was no time to engage even with children. You know, Noora is like, she used to come, Mama this. I said, baby, I want to have a cup of tea. Let me just kind of get back. Because you know what happens in offices, even if you're not busy, what is tiring is that you have to pretend to look busy. You know, you have to open your laptop and complete those man hours that are assigned to you, those 8-hour shifts. So the work is not what is tiring. Spending hours around the computer trying to look busy, so that just wasn't my cup of tea. So one fine day I told my husband that I think I want to take a sabbatical and decide what I want to do. He's like, yeah, I mean, you're comfortable, why do you need to do it for money or for the salary? Just chuck up and spend time with the kids and sort yourself out. So that's what I did. That was another turning point when I got into this whole introspection that I want to go to the gym, I want to write poetry, I want to do things that I've not been able to do because of my hours, the kind of hours I was putting in. Third was as a political activist, like 4-5 years ago, I felt it's a very unpopular choice. Everything was going good for me. I was attending parties, attending events, but you know, it's not something that you choose. Today when people say, "Yeah, kya zarurat hai TV pe aane ki?" मैंने कहा zarurat hai. Today if I'm there on every national channel, it's because I've earned a reputation. I stand for social causes. I stand for unity. I stand up against fascism, against you know, like people who are encroaching on free speech and our right to you know, whatever we have stood for. So when you're talking about, when you're writing on policy governance and you're taking on different political parties, and the government is not an easy job. Today they can be like someone might just send me a defamatory, you know, like a lawsuit in my inbox, or anything can happen because I'm sitting with some of the top MPs on national media every day, and you know, probably I'm criticizing some policies. You know, as a woman, you get subjected to a lot of trolling, a lot of hate. But at the same time, I get a lot of respect also. There are a lot of people say that you move on, we are behind you, you carry on, who else is going to do it? So I think that was the last turning point where I felt that I need to do something with civil engagement, with governance, policies, and work with the government. If something is done well, I will appreciate it. But if something is not going right, there have to be people who are critical of policies, of governance. So I think that has been so far my biggest challenge, where you take on the powers to be, and you're not doing it to earn name and fame, because that is the need of the hour. And I think it stems from a lot of entitlement, where people say, kya zarurat hai, your life is so good, got great in-laws, बच्चे हैं, parties attend करते, सब है, क्या ज़रूरत है उसको ले वो करने, you know, to take on this one and that. मैंने कहा, no, it's required. Because today people like us, educated people, we don't speak up. Then who is their representative? Who is their voice? Like what happens? You can't have, sorry to say, you can't have these extreme bigots from both sides of the fence representing you. There needs to be a liberal, rational voice talking some sense. So I think that is about it, and we can go on and on, but I would let you moderate the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Let not this be your last turning point, like you said. May you have many more, and all of you, may you have many more turning points. Now, what is the biggest thing about these turning points? You know, why do we even have to go into these turning points? I mean, you have a choice, and you don't have a choice. Because you know what? Sometimes choice is a privilege. I can choose to have a sandwich, or I can choose to have biryani. Not having a choice is also a privilege, like you said. You know, I can choose to just stay in my comfortable life, and you know, who cares? But there is that voice inside you, which will not let you sleep, which will not let you be comfortable. And you know, this word comfortable is it's not a comfortable word actually, most of the time. Because it arouses a lot of discomfort in a lot of us. The minute you're comfortable, you're stagnant and you're not moving anywhere. Also, what I'd like to talk next about, you know, we were talking about turning points, and all of you here, all of us, all of people on the planet have turning points. Whether we do something with it choice. I might get a voice saying to me that you need to do this, or you need to oppose this, or you don't have to accept this, but I can ignore it and say, okay, I don't need to do this. But and what stops us? Fear. You know, we have heard about the achievements of all these people, but there are a lot of young people here, and it doesn't matter young, old. You know, if you're 80, if you want to change your life, please do it. Because it's not your age. You can do your small thing in your own way. Small, big, whatever. I'm going to try and talk to you about fear. You know, that stops us. Why do we not do these things? And I'd like to talk to all these women about their fears, if they are happy to chat about it. I'm very happy. Most of the time I'm fearful. I am conquering them. So if we can sort of limit, because I'd like to cover, because it's very interesting. I'm actually enjoying this the most. So try and talk about your fears. When you were there, when you were on that threshold and thinking, you know what, shall I or shall I not? You know, my marriage is breaking. Shall I just be comfortable and be here? It's okay. You know, it's fine. I can keep up appearance. I was gone to this village, to this wherever we don't know, and we don't know whether he's coming back. You know, how do we carry on? How does your mother carry on cooking? You know, when she doesn't know what's happened to her husband. So I think let's talk about this. That is the only limiting thing we have, I think. Fear. So let's talk about our fears. As honestly as we can.
Fear. I don't know, fear propels us also, in a way, right? You're rational, hopefully you're rational. So therefore there's always this thought about what if, pros and cons, etc., etc., etc. And you are scared in the whole process, of course. But somewhere down the way, something, even in that fearful moment, I think rationality strikes and says, this is the way forward. If you're at a crossroad, then this is the way forward. This is the less fearful way forward. The truth is that apparently it may be very, very difficult. So I will talk about the fact that I left my 20-year-old career and where I was right at the top, and I decided to take on my family business and help organize, consolidate things, because a 50-year-old business does need organization, consolidation, and that's what I'm doing right now. But the fact is that it's crazy, right? You leave your fat paycheck, you leave the way everybody's known you forever, and quite a few people here are people who've known me through that life, and you leave your comfort zone and then you take on crazy stuff. My life has moved 360 degrees from luxury to land labor litigation, and that's quite a change. But having said that, why was I not scared? Of course I was. In a very poetic way, I remember it was a great drizzling day in Guwahati, and I had gone to collect the Best Hoteliers Award for Marriott. And I got some free time and I sat and I thought, what am I doing? Even after that, for 6 months I contemplated. And then I went up to my general manager and I said, this is it, and I think I need to do this, and this is a good time for me to do this. So you do it out of necessity, you really do it out of necessity. I don't think you do it for any other reason but necessity. So whether it's a broken marriage, whether you decide to say that enough is enough, because while it's very important to carry on, it's also very important to know when to let go. So therefore, you actually do it because of an impending need that you have to tread the other path. I think that's the only way. And are you not fearful all along the way? Yes, of course you are. That's a constant accompaniment. But then there's also this constant way of taking, just carrying on and doing the best wherever you make hay while the sun shines, wherever you are.
I do not know whether I should call it fear, but yeah, of course, that every human being has to take a decision, take a call, and there are pros and cons. So at a very early age, then I got married at the age of 18, and that time I decided that when I was going to my in-laws' place and we had to perform a ritual of, as if like symbolic giving back whatever I have taken and eaten and everything, like I'm giving back to you. So which I refused to do at that point of time, and my brother-in-law, I remember, said, it's just a ritual, why don't you do it? I said, I was very emotional. as a girl that I'm leaving my parents, my house, everything, going to someone's house I do not know, and then you are asking me to do this ritual. I said no, and this is not possible. So I think I conquered one fear at that point of time at a tender age. There are a lot of fears actually, or I would say a decision. A decision was like getting married, and then leaving. Just I was hearing from my co-panelist about a fat chick, when I was earning and I was very well settled in an agency, and I just gave up that job and thinking that I needed more at home. It's not that anybody has persuaded me, but that was my call, and I don't regret for that. Leaving, had I been continuing, I know that I would have been in a very higher position, but yet it was needed that point of time, and I don't regret. The third one, at a mature age, at the age of 44, when I'm a mother of I think 19 years old son, and I decided to participate in a pageant. Mrs. International. So, as you all know that I am only 5'2" and I'm not like 5'6", 5'8" or 5'9". So probably at the mature age, that's the reason I got through also my entry. But yeah, I really worked hard. That was a fear because that time, like it was in 2018 when I was already settled, my image was already established as a social entrepreneur. Social activist or a social entrepreneur or a social worker is supposed to be wearing a very simple and a very decent clothes. That's something like expected. Not necessary, but it's expected. And then over there, I thought of taking up a challenge to participate in a pageant. So I decided and I told my husband the next day that I would like to join there. Then he just looked at me thinking that, what am I talking? I said, yeah, I would like to. Are you sure? You think about your image and everything. And I said, no, I'm going to go ahead because it's important for, particularly the women after 40 should take care of themselves. Because we are the one which we give least importance to ourselves, our well-being, our exercise or daily routine or regime. So I thought this is going to go as a message if I do this. And I went ahead and with all your blessings and by God's blessings that I won the title and the crown as Mrs. International. That was held in Dubai. There are 15 other countries who had participated. I just come from a very conservative family. When you just talked about the fear, I would always keep everybody like in a good mood, good humor. And if anybody would just say no, then I would definitely, like even if I want to go ahead, then I would take a second call, like whether to go ahead or not. I'll just give you a small example how my family world is. I was going to a parlor, driving my own car. My husband called me up and said, where are you right now? I said, I'm going to a parlor, it's close by. How are you going? The driver is with me. I said, I'm driving. Stay there where you are. Just stay there. The driver is reaching you. And I, like a good girl and a good wife, I listened to him and I went and I parked the car and I was waiting for the driver to come. So that's the kind of family that I come from and making my husband supporting me right now, and because of him also today, every time in every forum, I acknowledge him because of his support, that whatever I'm doing, he's there by my side. And I'm able to convince that what I'm doing, and he has started believing in me. That is the thing, that we have to conquer our fear. And if it is right, we will definitely get the support, because white is white and black is black. Day and night, we all know everything. I mean, we have to support what is right. Thank you.
Before we move on, I'm just going to make one observation. Your husband saying stop the car came out of love.
That's
And we do not want to. No, my point is, it is possessiveness, and I don't want to judge men and say, you know, they are wrong.
It is protective.
Yes, and because from childhood they have seen that. So I think it is about transforming ourselves and saying, no, we are capable of it. I think it will take generations, and it's a subconscious thing. We didn't even think that, let her go, it's okay, we are equals. If I can drive a car, so can she.
And I want the champion also. It's like,
Well, even if somebody is not a champion, just because you're a champion, you might not be the best driver on the planet. But you know, it doesn't matter. I can be a better driver. And the thing is, I think it is not his fault. So let's not judge and say, okay, he was wrong to say, you know, it is possessive. It is out of love, because that's what we have been taught as a culture.
Something on this.
Oh.
Since 1971, I'm driving. My father was with British Airways. He always said, drive, take out your car, be independent.
Freedom,
whatever,
that's freedom.
whatever. And I got married to an army officer. He was in the infantry and the guards. And he never drove. So when I used to drive in Calcutta, you won't believe, he used to sit next to me, being an army officer, the smartest person I have ever met, because he had a lot of humor, a lot of jokes with him. Those days when no computer, nothing, and I lost him long back. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, he used to sit next to me, and he used to say, people are passing remarks, but the lady is driving, who is comfortable. He said, let them. I am happy. I've got a chauffeur driver. So this is what I am come up with. But my father was very Indian. My husband was that. He said, doesn't matter, let them say. So till now, I have never kept a driver. It's 44,
Good for you.
45 years.
And in this traffic, you deserve a
I
salute.
love it. I love to drive here, so that is all.
I'll just talk about another point about fear rather than talking about my own fears. I would say, where does it come from? You know, the moment we are born, I think our education and everything starts the moment we are born. People fill up the forms and the interview thing is gone. And the whole education system, these are the marks, these are the classes, these are the subjects. So as a society, a human society, we've defined कि ऐसे ही जीना है. This is the way to live. You are born, now you take education, now you get married, now you do this, now you produce children, now you raise children, now you look after the parents. But I would say that, was that our goal when we were born? Did we take birth to get educated? Or was education created for us so that we can understand this life a little bit, the globe a little bit, the universe a little bit, have some basic knowledge of it so that we can survive a little better in this planet where we were born? But somehow the goal is lost right in the beginning. And we have no clue who are all these people who took birth, because he is different from her, she is different from her. Each one of us are so different from each other, and we came here for a purpose. And the reason we are facing corona or any other disaster is because we never realized our purpose. We never thought about it because no one ever told us about it. And we never tried to explore it. So the question is that right from the beginning, can these fears be nipped in the bud? Because we as a society are creating these fears for ourselves, and the biggest fear for each one of us is, wo kya sochega? I mean, even the ones who've, overcome a lot of it, the bigger ones, the smaller, there's still a lot of them. The closest partner, your husband, your children, at least to think of them. No, let me stay back at home, what will he think, or whatever. So some you do out of love, some you do out of because you're supposed to do that. So the question is that, what if, I'm also coming to the other side of it. Yes, if this is where the fear starts right from the beginning, then is there a solution to it? Because there's no reason we keep on harping about कि ये problem है हमारे social conditioning में या education में, and then we don't talk about the solution. The solution is right here with us. If all of us who talk about activism and everything, and we can look at right from childhood? Is there a way? Are there methodologies that all of us can create together where each one is treated as an individual? And right from the beginning, we can explore what are the qualities that you are born with. Maybe you're just born a good speaker who can take on things, a good corporate person, a good person who can take up a social cause like Jude, a good poet. What is it that your raw material is made of? Because you came to this earth with a purpose. So please don't leave the earth without that purpose. And the moment you start exploring yourself right from the beginning, and it is told to you that it's okay to be different, it's okay and it's good to be an individual, more than 80% of your fears will be gone, because you will be the king of your own kingdom and you will feel happy. So how about looking at how this can be achieved, looking at overcoming fears right from childhood? I know we cannot reverse, but can we change it for the ones who are growing up? And we, the children of 40s, can change it further for ourselves. Even if today we decide, I'm going to find out who I am. I'll find out ways and means and methods through which I will find out who I am. And then live that to the fullest, because that is my purpose of life. Because that is what I have to give back to the universe before I leave this earth. That's what I would like to say.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so beyond fear is freedom. So what happens is there's so many things that can fetter us, tie us down. And what actually unfetters us is when you move beyond the fear. Because beyond fear is freedom. Because today we can be apprehensive, fearful about neighbors. What are the neighbors going to say? What are the relatives going to say? What is my peer group going to say? What is the people that I meet at parties and social tools? What are they going to think about me? So I think what has actually happened to more or less all of us is that probably we moved to a junction where it doesn't matter. Let so and so think whatever they have to. Let this person think whatever have to. I believe in this cause. I believe in the work that I'm doing. I believe that I'm making some kind of concerted efforts to see that whatever the stance I stand for, go beyond the monetary and the corporate. You're trying to make a difference in every other way. Be it as a thought influencer, be it in social impact, be it in the arts and creativity. So I think what happens is when you move beyond log kya sochenge, that is when you actually start soaring, when it really doesn't matter. A lot of people say, kya zarurat thi, you were coming on page 3 and you were coming on this page. No. It was never about page 3, it was never about some, that kind of addition. For me, you get over it. It's a part of growing up. 20s, we've seen enough of, all that, you go through it. And then you want to do something not because it's forced upon you or you're representing two families that are prominent. It's because you want to do it. Today, end of the day, you can have all the royalty with you, you can have all the name with you, but if you don't push it forward, if you don't carry the names forward, legacies die. So it's very easy for legacies to die until you don't itself carry it forward. Nothing comes to you on a platter. You have to create your own identity, your own niche, and main thing is be honest about what you're doing. You can fake it for a day, but you won't be able to sustain it for so many years. Once or twice you can lie about, oh, I stand for this or I stand for that. But to make it a sustainable thing for years and years requires some innate passion for what you believe in. So the popular thing was, this whole, this period of transition when you're getting out of corporate booths and you're getting into the creative line, you're doing theatre, you're doing poetry, and then from there you feel, no, it's a time where, there's a lot of things happening in the country. And somewhere, if not be tied down to a political party, but yeah, there is a space that is there are things that are lacunae. There is a vacuum in that space, so you can fill that space because you can know about it, you can read about it, because these things happen organically. I talk about politics on the breakfast table, so it comes naturally. Whenever I'm thinking of writing, I'm sending an article to a known portal. If I'm writing about the CA or any other contentious issue, be it 370, 377, so I need to have my own individual stand on it. So what happens is it's like a double-edged sword. So whenever anyone takes strong positions, especially on policy, governance, you risk becoming unpopular because people probably feel it's not required. How do you know it's not required? Are you in the same boat? Are you going to get disenfranchised? Will you be sent to a detention center? No. But there are 1,000 lakhs who probably hold you as a beacon, probably who get that inspiration from you, get that courage from you. So you need to stand up for a whole lot of people and make it inclusive. Talk, represent everyone. Don't just represent one section. Talk about everyone. Take everyone with you, and that's it. Talk sense, because I think there's so much of extremity on everything. There has to be some kind of a rationalization that needs to be done.
If not you, who? If not me, who? I think if we don't take responsibility for everything, and it again starts from a very early age, or maybe we define it's different journeys we go through. I'll give you a small example. The two things that keep ringing in my brain from a very, from my childhood, that my parents always said when we were children, যে আমাদের বাড়িতে ছেলেদের কাজ আর মেয়েদের কাজ বলে কিছু নেই, সবাই সব কাজ করে। I think that is where it starts. Maybe my mother will say to me, আজকে আজকে সালওয়ার কামিজ শাড়ি পরে যা, আজকে বিয়ে বাড়ি। But at the same time she's saying ছেলেদের কাজ আর মেয়েদের কাজ বলে কিছু নেই। So at least that idea of equality gets planted. Also, this is something that is a refrain in my life. My father always said, "Na bolte shekho." I still haven't done it, but I'm in the process of making. Na bolte shekho. As a kid, you never know. I mean, why? Why is it so difficult to say no? Well, which is the most difficult thing I think especially for us, because we have that cultural baggage of, and ki hobe? Somebody is going to be disappointed. Okay, fine. People have disappointed me all my life. So why can't I disappoint you people? Deal with it. You're adults. Just deal with it. Life is not perfect. Tell them as well. You're disappointed. Great. Deal with it. Anyway, the next thing I'd like to talk about. I'm going back to your story of this poetics and rainy morning. We have a rationale and a creative and a spirit that guides you. Something that guides you, and it is a mixture. It's never only rational, it's never only poetic or emotional, and it's never only a spiritual poem. So I'd like to ask you all, what is your rationality? How do you work out, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's your left brain. Not defining it again, but I'm just saying it. That's your left brain, which is actually working out. Where you go into an app and say, this is what's going to make my life easier, because the shopping, I can do it in 10 minutes. So that's your left brain. Your right brain is when you look at the Himalayas and think, there is something bigger than me. There is something bigger than me which tells me that this is not enough. Something that tells you. So, and some spirit, whether it's God, whether it's life, whether it's humanity, whether it's youth, whether it's reviving theatre, whether it's working in prison cells, whether it's talking about people who can't speak for themselves. So talk to us about your rationality, your emotions, and your guiding spirit, please.
How does one
I'm sorry,
encapsulate
you're the first one to answer.
everything, but that's fine. Someone has to do it, someone has to tell you. So, yeah, this is a very beautiful topic, Paramita.
Thank
It's a very
you.
beautiful topic. And it's true that it's a mixture of a whole lot of things that make us, who we are. how does one define one's rationality? How does one do it in a general perspective? I don't know. I will speak for myself because this is a deeply personal question. The fact is that it's something that you evolve as you go along every day. It's something you don't decide that this is it, this is the rationality, this is at the same time you are doing a particular piece of work and you are doing all that it takes to do that particular piece of work. It's a combination of who you are, what makes you the person you are, because I will react from the gentleman out there, he will react differently. So it's a very peculiar chemistry that works for each one of us at a very, very individual level. There is a sense of right and wrong, of course, but the sense of right and wrong is very relative. So therefore, what is relative to me, it may not relate to you at all. So within that, I think few basic things is to note, I would say, is that be responsible. Be a responsible human being all through, for yourself, for those who depend on you or who you're close to, and for the world at large. So maybe that is a huge point number one for rationality. Do the things as best as you can. Don't do a slipshod, superficial job, because that doesn't work for me. And sometimes superficial jobs work for a lot of people, it doesn't work for me. So yeah, be honest, be true to yourself, try and be responsible while doing it, and try and do a good job of it. I think that those three lines is what I've always been guided by. So that's perhaps is my rationality.
And your emotions and your guiding spirit, all rolled into one.
Well, for me, rationality, something like I just want to follow my wish, which comes from within. It's a calling. I feel that I'm the chosen one. And I decided to serve humanity. And so people have asked that initially used to ask that what is your non-profit organization, what does it do, what do you do, what is your idea of doing. But believe me, I had no kind of particular agenda to do something. But later on, when I accumulated all my work, then I have seen that it is women empowerment. And while doing so, I thought that not only that panel discussions or like advocacy, I thought that it is important that I have to penetrate to the other stratas of the society, like the grassroots level, women from the lower socio-economic background. So I thought that skill development was very important. So skill development, then I thought if I'm skilling them, why not? I should also be consciously doing the same while conserving the environment. While doing so, I realized that I should be also promoting the inclusivity. So women empowerment while conserving environment and targeting inclusivity. So while doing so, which are the people I thought of, taking the rural women. We started doing the rural women and trained them with the security and employed them our non-profit organization. Right now we account 1,25,000 people that we have impacted, and through skill development and employment. A few of them are working as a Green Police and also in various organizations as security guards. More than 40% they are women. I started working from 2016 in the correctional home, and as I was mentioning about that, I started working. So I have already accomplished like 10 projects, cookie making with the women inmates, spoken English with personality development, various other projects like leather, painting. We have a project with the kids and the mother. Because as you know probably that after the age of 6 years that children stay with their mother in the correctional home. So, skilling them, then giving them the, after serving the correctional home, at a don't know, while saying so many things come up actually. And these are not scripted. I think my co-panelist friends, they're also talking like from their heart.
Thank God.
So something, come up, and I try to, like, not to, later on, not to speak right now. So today only I was just going through one, that after 14 years, one woman was released from the prison. Now she has got only her only daughter, to stay with. After 14 years means, the world has changed completely. Particularly, women who are not so educated or, not employed or not economically independent. So that person, when she's coming out of the prison, where will she go? That's a very, very big question, and we really need to contemplate on that. She goes to her only daughter refuses to, keep her. Now next what? Somebody reached out to me, so as I was telling you that I deal with human stories every day. So this is one thing. So there are many stories and many things that I'm coming. There I was talking for which aspect?
Your rational, your emotion,
Rational.
and your spirit, guiding spirit. What guides you?
So this, what guides me, I don't know, but I just get the spirit that I have to push. It pushed me ahead. So when I see the smile of these people, so I think that I have achieved something, and then I believe that is my achievement, more than the awards and recognition and applause that I get. And probably that if you are doing something good, a lot of positive vibes accumulate and push you further ahead. And I also get the support of my family, friends, and well-wishers. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, being an artist and a performer right from the beginning, I think what guides me or inspires me are people themselves, and being an entertainer, but also my work since childhood has always been, deep-rooted in a lot of thought and very intense. So entertainment along with a lot of intense thought has been my calling forever. It just keeps getting intense with moving time. So the reason I talked about education and the seed where the fear starts is because it concerns me that what are we leaving for our children? What are we leaving for the next generation? We, a generation and a couple of generations before us, we've consumed so much. And especially our generation, because our parents have been the generation, at least in this part of the world, who suffered from partition and a lot of other, making India what it is. And then we were the luxury kids. We got everything in a plate and we consumed it like greedy animals. And look at what we've done to the world. We were so hungry and so greedy that we consumed and consumed every day for the last 30, 40 years, and without a thought of what's going to happen to our next generations. And we cut the jungles, the environment, the clothes that we wear are increasing every day, the things that we are using are increasing every day. And that's why we've played complete havoc with this planet that's called Earth. And that's why it's telling us back now that, you've not done it right. And I feel the saddest about our children, about the coming generations, that we really, and we will be gone and they will be paying the price of what we have done. So my calling is, yes, the women, being a woman myself, but also I realized, because I indulged in this very intense, since past 8 years, women empowerment project through theatre. Now the husbands and the men with whom, the men who were also the youngsters I had been working with, they've been saying that where are we, and I feel concerned about them, because I also feel that what is the root cause of where did it happen, the inequality, if we say it ever happened. So again, going back to what has been my calling is also to identify is where's the root cause of this inequality, because we are all Ardhanarishwar, we are equal, right? We have the man in us and we have the woman. Some of us have the woman more, some of us have the man more. And that's why we have the master chefs who do the cooking. So it wasn't the bahu of the family who first became the master chef. It's just that it comes, the nature made us like the man was the provider and the woman was the nurturer. And that's how it started, and it was beautiful. The woman could, वो चक्की पीस सकती थी, वो बहुत सारे hard काम कर सकती थी और वो करती थी. उसी तरह से the man had few jobs that he was doing. The problem as a layman that I have, I'm not very codified research scientist, but I do it in a very layman's language. So I felt the difference started happening when the power got associated with money. The person who was getting the money home became the powerful one, and he said, I am the powerful one, so I can do anything. And that's where the other partner who was leading the life with him, at least 60 years ago, because in 60s the maximum revolution started. The other partner said, this is not true, I'm an equal partner, so how can you even say that you are the more powerful partner? And that's where the whole struggle started, to just establish that, oh, we are equals. So I think all these factors that surround us, that make life more beautiful, with love, with compassion, with understanding life a little more, environment a little more, are all my guiding forces.
So, talking about inspiration and talking about the balance between being pragmatic and emotional, I think all of us come to a junction where there's a choice between rationality, reason, and your romanticism about utopia and ideas and all that. But end of the day, what happens is more than being a wife, being a mother makes you really vulnerable. Now, every step that one takes, one has to think that the children are still very small. You might be fearless and you might be taking on the high and mighty and whatever it is in your own capacity. But what would be the consequences if you, not that my stance would be wrong, what I'm thinking is, that rationality kicks in. That, okay, you're taking a risk, to a certain extent, but, there are so many people who are just being rounded up, they're being, a lot of charges are being put, all kinds of charges. So you start thinking, how is it going to affect your children? Now, what I started doing is, because I travel a lot, every 10 days, some conference, some literature festival, some political thing. I don't put up on social media, because I'm making vulnerable to myself. And there are goons out there, especially when you're taking on different political parties and you're talking about the high and mighty in your opinion editorials and everything else. So I don't mention it. Once the event is over, then I put it up on social media because I had to just chat with my family and my parents and in-laws. There's no need to put everything out there. You don't become more popular or less popular because every minute you're updating, you're here or you're there. Because you're going to get vulnerable to attack. For example, I'll give you a very simple instance. A national channel had called me on a debate with Kanhaiya Kumar. I was on the same panel with him in Delhi. This is in December. This is when the CA and RC thing was going on. I was part of the protest and everything. So I was sitting with Kanhaiya on the panel at a 5-star hotel. Now you don't know who's in the audience. There was someone who was part of the audience and he walked up as if he was coming right to the stage. I didn't mention it to my family. Only when I came back to Kolkata, I told my husband, look, he's like, see, this is part of the thing. It's because of the stand you've taken and you would be vulnerable. Someone might just come. No, I don't know. Someone might be sitting with a gun. Some might just fly off the handle. Anyone can do anything at any point. The people are running amok. People are going lunatic. They're totally losing it. So what happens is, it's fine to be fiery, it's fine to be courageous. A lot of people are so courageous. Yeah, I am courageous. At the same time, now I need to keep reminding myself that I'm also a mother. I've got a child, who's completely dependent on me emotionally and who's just 9 years old, emotionally and otherwise. So I need to keep in mind that there are risks I can take, but it's
foolish to be extra. You don't need to, like go over the edge. You can do it in a way. So what I started doing is without naming any person, I still, tend to put my point across. A, B, C person. You kind of tweak your language. Allegedly so and so. So what happens is when you are dealing with such cases, if you put the name, you say Mr. High and Mighty, or you can say Sahib, or you can use these kind of nicknames so where people understand who you're talking about, yet you've not named it. So this is something that over the years, to avoid any legal lawsuits or things like that, because I can't be doing court kacheri, when I'm taking on these people. So to avoid these issues, you have to become smarter on how you do it. You share an article, you share a critique, bang bang, you take them on. But what happens is, today on Twitter, everyone is following me, the media is tagging me every day, and now I can't openly, start talking rubbish. I need to understand if I'm criticizing, there has to be a nuanced language about it. It has to be, your language has to be tempered, your stance have to be, even if you're right, but people might catch you on your verbiage. So you have to be very careful about the verbiage that you use. You become vulnerable, A, then. You don't know, some kind of a defamation suit might be sitting in your inbox. B, yeah, they are goons who are running amok. So you don't know, someone can be sitting in a 5-star with a pistol. So today if you're talking about secularism, which is again a cuss word, is treated as a cuss word. So people will think, God knows what. So today the kind of values we stood for is being abused. So today being a liberal is a cuss word, being secular is being mocked at, being inclusive is being mocked at. So today society overall, I'm talking about overall, globally, is moving towards extremism and radicalism, and I think that needs to be challenged. So I think these are two crucial points. A, when you're rational, yet you have the utopia in your mind, yet you need to be nuanced, the way your language and the kind of stance you take. B, you have to keep reminding yourself that you're a mother. So how the kind of stance you take, what would be the consequences of that on your children? Thank you.
Thank you everyone. We will just quickly wrap this up. But before I wrap up, I'm going to give you a harder question. I'm going to ask you for 3 words. So no, you're allowed no sentences. The 3 qualities that you think has made you. Okay, so no sentences. You can take 30 seconds to think about it. And we're going to wrap up after that. And all I would say from the entire panel is that I'm not going to segregate men, women, children. Let's look at humanity. And let's help everyone to be the best version of ourselves. Let the man become the nurturer. Let the woman go out and work. Let the child do whatever they want. I think this is the world we should pray for, and this is our utopic world that we should think. So let's not make Women's Day just for women. Let us take the stance, because we are the homemakers. We are still the homemakers. And whether you go out to work or not is immaterial. You are still the homemaker. Men are homemakers too. So let homemakers start and say, let's be the best version we can. And you all strive. May your journeys continue. May you never stop. May you become unbridled, uncontrollable, and may your energy never extinguish. Now you have at least 30 seconds, I'm sure, more than that. So let's get the 3 words.
3 words.
3 words.
Sincere, compassionate, bindas.
Fabulous.
Determination, confidence, perseverance.
Fantastic.
Understanding myself, dreamer, doer.
Emotional, fearless, astute.
I was asked to end this seminar or chat. I think this is not a seminar. Before that, I would like to thank Tribe, and this is our Tribe, for doing this. And may this continue, and I'm going to finish this with a prayer. A prayer that was injected to me, not, a philosophy that was injected inside me by my mother. And my prayer is Rabindranath Tagore. So that's what I'm going to do, 4 lines. So if I remember, I'll do the whole song. Let's see. And this is to all of you, men, women, children, it doesn't matter. We are inclusive. Women are great at keeping people together. And I think that is our greatest skill. Whether we can cook or clean or do whatever, it doesn't matter. We are good adhesives. We don't like segregating things. So let's get this forward. Get the mic. তোমার খোলা হাওয়া লাগিয়ে পালে তোমার খোলা হাওয়া টুকরো করে কাছি আমি ডুবতে রাজি আছি আমি ডুবতে রাজি আছি তোমার খোলা হাওয়া লাগিয়ে পালে তোমার খোলা হাওয়া সকাল আমার গেল মিছে বিকেল যে যায় তারই পিছে গো সকাল আমার গেল মিছে বিকেল যে যায় তারই পিছে গো রেখো না লাগিয়ে পালে তোমার খোলা হাওয়া মাঝের লাগিয়াছি জাগি সকল রাত্রি বেলা ঢেউগুলো যে আমায় নিয়ে করে কেবল খেলা মাঝের লাগিয়াছি জাগি সকল রাত্রি বেলা ঢেউগুলো যে আমায় নিয়ে করে কেবল খেলা ঝড়কে আমি করব নিতে ডরব না তার ভ্রুকুটিতে দাও ছেড়ে দাও ওগো আমি তুফান পেলে বাঁচি আমি ডুবতে রাজি আছি আমি ডুবতে রাজি আছি তোমার খোলা হাওয়া লাগিয়ে পালে তোমার খোলা হাওয়া
Thank you to this very interesting panel that we have today. Thank you, the audience. That you've been so lovely, and it's very interesting to see a very full house. What I was just reflecting upon while I was hearing all of you is that it's a perfect combination of a left brain and a right brain. Something that myself and Paramita, that we keep on talking, that all of you are very strong in your creative side, the way that you're doing, at the same time organizing, gathering and collaborating, which is a very work of a left brain, and being successful and being there, remaining successful is the most interesting element. I'm sure there are many inspiration that like the youngsters are here, they are going to get, and aspiring to be coming, talking about Saira, standing for a cause, and being extremely passionate about it. There has been not a single statement of hers where she has not touched upon it, and that shows the level of the depth of her passion. Coming to Ramanji, the creative therapy that you've spoken, it comes completely from very deep inside you. And as we were hearing, we could feel it. I mean, the way you were saying your attachment to the art, we could just feel it.
I'll come to Paramita later. Coming to Ipshita, the way, totally poet in her, the way she speaks itself is a poetry. And it is so delightful hearing you itself. And very precise, complete work of, left and right, complete, very precise. And coming to Chaitali, again, moving from one genre to the other, moving from holding the house to holding kind of a prison inmates together and giving them direction. It's not easy. And I've seen your journey, I've followed your journey for a while. And, coming to Paramita, you were the adhesive today. So the way you conducted, the way you kind of, moved from one question to other, it was lovely. And it was completely, I'm sure all of us who have been here for a very long time, hearing all of you could understand and feel the journey that all of you had. It was lovely having you. It was simply a pleasure having you, and complete unbridled discussion, complete free-flowing discussion. There's no preparation.
I'm very bad at homework, my mother will tell you.
So thank you everybody, thank you to all of you, and thank you
Shilpa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.